Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Get Full, Stay Full, Combating Low Seasons to Generate More Revenue, presented by Stay in Touch and SHR. I'm your host, Justin DeRisi, and I'm joined today by our panel. First up is Nicole Adair, Corporate Director of Revenue Management for SHR. Nicole's current focus at SHR is to oversee operations for SHR's Revenue Management for Hire department. In this role, she leads a team of experienced directors of revenue management, serving SHR client hotels by improving and advancing their revenue generation and distribution strategies. As a certified revenue management executive, CRME, she has extensive experience in directing connectivity and channel interfacing initiatives for multiple CRS, PMS, and channel management platforms. Joining us from Stay in Touch is Ryan King, Director of Strategic Partnerships. Ryan is a former hotelier with almost 20 years of experience that has encompassed almost every department in the hotel industry. Before coming to Stay in Touch, he worked at TravelClick, where he consulted with individual properties and large management groups to help them find technology to improve RevPAR and increase profitability. At Stay in Touch, Ryan routinely helps organizations examine their processes and look for ways to improve performance, enabling hoteliers to better engage with their guests, thereby increasing their revenue. Now, with that said, let's go over today's agenda for the webinar. So we're going to start today's webinar by going into why low seasons occur and talking about some of the common reasons why you might get lower occupancy. Then we're going to go into the importance of marketing segmentation and identifying the targeted guests who stay away, and perhaps even new segments that you would want to attract to your hotel during the low season. Next, we're going to look into some solutions for low seasons. We're going to cover different loyalty programs or unique offers or packages that you could offer your guests. We're also going to look into the technological aspects. If you want to have very granular market segments, you're going to need tech to give you to basically wrangle all of that data. Finally, we're going to look at price points and understand how you can set understand the smart way to set price points to get full and stay full. We will also have a short Q&A session at the end of the presentation. Feel free to submit questions throughout the webinar when we will answer them in the order that they are received at the end of the presentation. You can submit questions through the question box in the middle of the control panel. And that's all I have for now. I'd like to turn the presentation over to our panelists, starting with Nicole on why low seasons occur.
All right, thank you very much. Good morning or afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. So I guess our first question is really, why do low seasons occur and when do they occur? And this is a really important thing for your hotel team to kind of sit down and analyze as part of a SWOT analysis, because it really will inform both your budget, your forecast, and your marketing strategy. So a couple of things that can really impact your seasonality would be weather, times of year when it's too hot, too cold, too rainy, or even the unpredictability of it. So, for some properties, particularly in destinations, say for snow, that can really, really impact your low season. And if it's not as good in one year specifically, natural attractions can impact this. So again, if you're a destination for skiing, you may struggle in the summer or in the shoulder mud season. And conversely, if you are very much a summer destination, your low season is going to fall in the winter and potentially the fall, when your normal transient guests aren't really looking to vacation somewhere like your destination. More social attractions, you might be a location that's really well known for special events that only occur a few times a year, and you struggle to get fill outside of those time periods. So figuring out what exactly is driving your low seasons is really critical, and it'll force you to figure out how to market your property to people who are not necessarily going to be your customers outside of your demand periods. So next slide, Justin. Okay, can we go? Oh, there we go. All right. So a lot of hoteliers will kind of reflexively lower rates during the low season, and sometimes this is necessary, but it's not always going to result in the increased occupancy that you're going after. So, because guests who only book to pay significantly lower rates are not going to be ones that are going to help generate additional revenue in your other outlets, which is really somewhere that you can focus in the shoulder seasons to help boost your overall revenue. And again, the very discount or perhaps opaque driven guests are probably not going to be the ones to drive this area. And additionally, significantly reducing your rates in low season can impact both your reputation as a brand and your rate integrity, and make it actually more difficult to maintain your higher season or your higher rates in the higher season. So it's very, very important to be strategic about lowering rates and make sure that that's not just the reflexive solution. All right, thank you. Next slide.
Sure. And now we're going to transition over to Ryan, who will tell us how to identify and target guests who stay away.
Thanks, Justin. Well, as Nicole was talking, it's not always about lowering your rate. That's really not the main purpose. Now, we all know we have to play in a competitive space, but I think it's easy to sit there and say that our Priceline guest is not our ideal guest. We know they don't come back, they don't spend in our restaurants, they don't do the things that we need them to do. So you really need to look and utilize the data that you have to understand what is available for you to market out and who are the profile of the guests that you do. Now, retailers have worked on this buyer persona things for over a decade, and they've become very finite in this, and it's really coming into the hotel world lately. And using data that you have, you can create different buyer personas based on the channel that they come through, perhaps the number of guests that are staying in the room, the date that they booked, the room type they're booking, are they male, are they female? All of these type of data that comes out of the PMS can help you to essentially figure out who am I going to target to, what am I going to do to put together an offer that will be compelling for somebody to come to me when they normally wouldn't be here. Let's go to the next slide, Justin.
Sure.
So really part of the promotion reasons are to make sure that you're looking at putting something together that's going to speak to somebody that you know about. This goes back to that whole buyer persona thing. Who are the people that support your hotel? Why do they stay with you? We call this, when we come up with the right offer, the right person, is a fenced product, something that's going to appeal to them. A lot of hotels, and especially when I was still in the hotel industry, the most popular thing that we would ever do would be the bed and breakfast package. We'd be like, that's the only one we can sell. People always want breakfast, so we include that. We've actually found that people that spend time to create energy around specific personas, as well as events and things that happen around them, can be very successful at driving business to them during that time. So they're going to capture a little bit more of the market share rather than just lowering and grabbing those Priceline rooms. It really helps. And you have to think about this when you look at what you're doing with some of the things, how you're building these packages and targeting to people. If you're in a resort and you are including parking in a package, you need to understand that that is going to be a price-conscious traveler that you're trying to get to. So cross-selling them into a spa or something else like that isn't always the best way. And it's really understanding more about what's driving a person there. I think one of the things we've seen, is people that do things well. There's a resort over in Thailand called the Koh Samui, and there's a whole rainy season over in Thailand that just the resort kind of clears out. But they put a blog together and they do a really great job, and they publicize about things to do indoors, and they have packages that are kind of related to that. So they're looking at these personas of who would look at it, and they're doing things that are putting perks into this rather than discounting it. So they're starting to think about, what's going to cost the hotel money to give something away, and what's going to bring somebody value. Like if I say, hey, during the rainy season, we're doing upgrades to our deluxe oceanfront rooms, that's not really taking much out of the hotel, but it might be offering something to that persona that is looking for that value deal. Let's go to the next slide, Justin.
Thank you, Ryan. And now Ryan is going to talk some more about loyalty programs and unique packages.
Yeah, and I think this goes back to what we talked about, understanding that data that you have and really looking at ways to get the people that are champions in your property, who these frequent people guests are, and have them stay more often. Now, part of this is having some type of way to recognize customers that stay with you quite often and doing things for them that will help bring good emotions that they're going to look at and they're going to say, hey, this is great. I had a business travel sales manager that was brilliant with some of her regular guests. She'd occasionally put a snack pack in the room or a glass of wine or something like that. And she started doing something that I thought was absolutely phenomenal. She would ask those guests that were staying during the weekend, if they ever were coming to the city for anything on the weekend. And she would specifically give a little certificate and say, hey, if you come on the weekend, I'll go ahead and get you some drinks in the bar. Well, that clearly recognizes, your established clientele, and you're saying, hey, why don't you come back when you're doing everything with us? I know that you guys are on a corporate dime here, but perhaps, you could understand, could they come back at a different time? Same thing for resorts. If we put this the other way, you have those people that, are coming during certain times. Do they also do business in the area, and would they appreciate it if you were to sit there and say, hey, we'll give you an upgraded room type during the week if you're down here doing business travel? So other perks like this can really expose your negotiated accounts and your loyal following and all these people that are with you all the time. It can expose them to other aspects of your business and get them to really buy more with you. Next slide. So creating these specialized packages really helps to boost the occupancy and create more value for the person without lowering your rate. This goes back to that whole thing we mentioned earlier, and where Nicole was talking, it's not always about lowering the price. It's also about tying things in. What do you know about these guests? What do you think would be good for them? Giving somebody who stays for you a week every July some type of a perk to come stay on a weekend might actually get that person to consider it. If you know that that person would use your spa and they went to the restaurant for dinner, if you just send them an offer over a weekend and say, hey, come stay with us a weekend, you have it at the rack rate, but you say, you know what, we're going to include dinner, or we're going to include a spa treatment or something like that, that starts creating packages with value. Now we're trying to drive people into us and create some more revenue in our slower periods. We're not trying to get the masses into the hotel and just hope that we're full and, at the end of the day that the profitability out of that was good. We're actually trying to be thoughtful and methodical about the people that would come in and create packages that they will buy. Think about the guests that are staying with you, what they like and what they want to do, and don't premise this as, well, this is what I think people want about my hotel. Really use data that you have from your PMS and analyze that to get something and create a package that will speak to someone to create value. Next slide.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Ryan, so much for that. And I think it's really important to emphasize, like you were saying, looking at your guests that are already, especially the return guests that already do stay with you and have that loyalty, and really figuring out on an individualized basis what could get them to stay more or to come back during another times. I know two things that some of our properties have really seen success with is figuring out how to get their business travelers, if they're a very, Monday through Thursday busy property, how to keep their business travelers there over the weekend, whether that's putting together something to, bring your spouse out or bring out your family, have them come stay with you over the weekend, and giving some concessions there on the room or some value adds with breakfast or just something that is appealing and would make it a nice family stay has worked very well. And then for some destination properties, again, to use a ski property as an example, but if you know which of your guests are very active and outdoorsy and come and do all kinds of snowboarding and skiing, these guests may be very open to a package in the summer that's for mountain biking on those same ski trails. They just may not have thought of it, may not have been exposed to it. So just really individually evaluating. Got a little off track there, but as far as those hotels that are very busy Monday through Thursday, with corporate or trying to get more, this is a really, really important segment to really try to extend throughout the year. Obviously, your sales team, and I'm sure they are already out there, pounding the pavement and really going after local businesses, trying to get them to utilize the property more. Even if just for the room space, that can still help your top line revenue. If you have any meetings or event space that you can get local businesses to utilize in the off season. And one thing to really keep in mind is, just like you use dynamic pricing on your rooms, you can apply these same principles to your meetings and event space as well, and even your F&B. So whether that's looking at businesses that come maybe during a very high compression time of the year for you, that maybe you could offer some additional incentive and get them to shift their business so they come in the off season, whether it's with additional comp rooms, maybe, a break in F&B, something like that, to help move some of that business to the shoulder, or just adjusting kind of your pricing strategy in general on the shoulder to make it more attractive to people to book their meetings then. And likewise with F&B, dynamically price those, whether it's a slow period during the day. You may have different pricing packages for afternoons versus evenings versus mornings, and then just kind of across the year as well, to practice some more dynamic pricing strategies for your business segment to shift that business around as well. Next slide.
Excellent. So now we have reached the technology section, how to leverage tech to drive revenue at every guest touch point. I believe, Nicole, you are leading this one.
All right. Thank you very much. So maximizing your booking engine, and I know everybody always has a huge focus on direct bookings. So we definitely want to make sure that we're using all of the available technology, whether that's utilizing add-on functionality to offer some really unique add-ons, and maybe focus on the pricing a bit more in the off season, but make sure your guests are being presented with some really unique and attractive offerings, not only to help boost that shoulder season, but also to make your booking engine and that booking path a more attractive option versus kind of the generic things that they may find through Meta or on an OTA, to really help keep that business on your site and through your own booking engine. So utilizing add-ons, package rates that provide a value add for booking direct while maintaining parity. So one thing that can be very successful, instead of offering a direct discount or discounting your rate, is maintaining that rack rate, but your direct guests get free parking or they get free breakfast or something of that sort. So you're still not taking the hit on your overall rate, and also not running afoul of your OTA partners, because realistically, we do need those in the shoulder season. So we do want to make sure and maintain that relationship there. But that's something that you can use to help drive a bit of interest directly to your website or to the property directly. Utilizing a responsive booking engine, one that looks just as good on mobile as on desktop, because the booking patterns are continuing to shift that way towards mobile, and especially when we're talking about potentially last-minute guests that are on their phone. It's very important that you have a responsive booking engine that's easy to use on any sort of device that's accessing it, and reduce clicks to book. So we want to make sure that it's very easy, again, especially on mobile, for guests to just click the room, make their reservation. We're not requiring a ton of information from them at that point of booking, and just making it very quick and seamless for them to get to your website, make that booking. And then creating easy loyalty signups, again, to help drive those direct bookings and get that guest data, so you can market to them better in the future. So not only something that asks for their email, when they're booking, but utilizing functionality very similarly to the way the OTAs do, where you can even display a loyalty rate or a click here for a loyalty rate kind of functionality, to make it kind of a no-brainer for your guests to just go ahead, join your loyalty program, and book direct. So next slide. Okay, if we can hop to the next slide. I also want to touch on distribution. as well, because that is another important part of your CRS, and your booking engine obviously is a big piece of the puzzle for your distribution. Slow seasons are a time when you can get really creative with your different distribution channels. I know we like to avoid as much as possible discounting, using opaque paths, but during the slow season is probably a time when you need to look at utilizing those options. My suggestion to our clients is always that you evaluate every channel individually as far as pricing, that we don't just do 30% off on package and opaque or something across the board, because your comps are going to be priced differently on each channel, and your guests are going to be looking for slightly different things on each channel. So you want to manage them all independently, and make sure that you're staying on top of that so that you're priced competitively in displaying. And also something really important to consider is exploring any new direct connections or distribution partners that you may not currently be working with, especially in new and emerging markets. So I know everyone struggles sometimes with their inventory selling on channels that they are not in control of. That's a big pain point, I know. So we want to make sure whether we're controlling our own ARI on huge sites internationally like C-Trip or GoIDebo in India, are those ones you're actively managing? And if they're not, get those on a direct connection, because different markets are going to have different travel and stay patterns. So it may be kind of a lull for American booking, but it may be a fairly busy season for travel planning and booking in China. So you want to make sure that you are actively managing that, actively pricing it competitively, and just kind of looking outside of your current channels to see where you can expand to potentially kind of get into new markets. And my last point here, housekeeping item, but in the slow season, one thing to take advantage of at this point is to audit your channel content while you have the time, and make sure that your website, your GDS, your OTAs, that content is all up to date and attractive to the guests, because all of that will be very important, all year long. But definitely in the slow season, when you have time, it's a really critical thing to focus on. All right, and slide.
Nicole, I think it's really important, as you were talking about it, using this data, and as we're exploring our channels and we're looking at things and we're auditing what we do, it really does help to kind of manage the slow seasons and either bring on a little tap from somebody else or look at how we can go through some cost-saving methods. And that's why it is so critical to capture information that will be housed in the PMS and be able to use that information to look at those cost-saving message. Think about this: when there are certain times in the hotel that you could be condensing how the hotel is filling up, you could close down floors that would save some utilities on the property maintenance, or the engineers could get in there and they could touch up the baseboards, or the housekeeping could do some deep cleans, stuff that could be done uniformly across the way during these times. And there are different ways to do this. I mean, you can export a lot of information out of the PMS. There are BI tools that will help you visualize some of this, but you can also use Excel spreadsheets. One of the things I always say, though, is be careful about analysis paralysis. A lot of us sometimes go in there to look at the data, and then we get into it. And I have been in conversations with revenue managers before where 45 minutes have gone by, and we've evaluated so many different price points and data points and guest points, but then we didn't really go into it with an idea of what we wanted to get out of it. So make sure you have a plan on what you're looking to get out of this. All of this data is going to help you if you use it with the plan that you're looking to do. I want to understand, what rooms am I selling that haven't been upgraded? And then you can kind of go through and you can really slice and dice that and look and see, is there a price point that I should be covering more, or is there something that I'm not doing quite right here? Are my suites getting sold, or are they getting upgraded? And if they're getting upgraded, are they for the frequent guests or my group people, or are they just getting randomly assigned to people because the front desk doesn't have another room? So a lot of data that can help you make these decisions, but having that idea of what you're looking for. And of course, the key to all of this is using this data to do some remarketing about campaigns and looking at how folks are doing things. CRM tools can really help for that. They're ideal in doing these type of things. If you don't have a CRM, you can at least go through your data, start slicing and dicing, and put mail campaigns together by segmenting your list at the bare minimum. But it's important to use data to do this type of stuff. And data tells us a lot of things about what our guests are doing, and they talk to us about who's going to buy what and when they're going to buy it. And we've talked a lot about price isn't the only way to get revenue. A lot of add-ons can be done at this, and one of the best places to always look and keep doing this is at the various touch points. So we know that when somebody's making a reservation, we should be looking at them and asking them, hey, do you want an upgrade? Do you want an early check-in? Do you want a late checkout? We should be asking them again just before they arrive. And then at the point of time of arrival, we should be doing this too. One of the easiest things that hotels can do, and this is catching on a little bit more, is monetizing these early check-in and late checkout processes. People check into hotels all the time early. We say the check-in time's at 3 o'clock, but somebody arrives at noon and we just walk them in through the front desk. And that often is a lost opportunity on where we could have captured, another $10. And it may not sound like much, but if you have 100 rooms in your hotel and you have 75 arrivals that day and you charge $10 for every person that came in just a little before the check-in time, you might have, $400 or $500 worth of revenue on that one day just for people walking a little earlier. Now, it's great if you have a type of a mobile PMS that is going to help you with this, because then you can send this message over to people via their cell phones or while they're checking in. This has been proven time and again by the airline industry, who has perfected this. Individual humans sitting at the front desk have a very, very difficult time doing an early check-in fee. It's just almost impossible. It's not hospitable. Yet, if you send it to me on my phone before I arrive and I say, oh yeah, I'm going to be, my flight lands at 10:30, I'll be at that hotel by 11:30, they're offering me an early check-in for $25, I will totally buy that. And I will feel happy that the hotel gave me this offer and that I don't have to worry when I get there about it. Same thing with late checkout. I think it's becoming more and more common to see, people doing the late checkout. We have a couple clients that are doing it really brilliantly, where this is a huge revenue stream from them. The brands are pushing into this way too, so it's training the consumers. You're getting a message, and it's coming on your phone, and it's saying, hey, checkout's at noon, but if you want to stay for an extra hour, it's this much. If you want to stay for that, so really these are incremental pieces that are going to help boost up your revenue. It's very, very easy way to make that extra revenue. And honestly, using mobile technologies and things that are going to help you, they actually help your interaction with a guest, and they can help push some of these things. I had a brilliant example of this when I was in Houston at the Hotel Alessandra, who uses our platform. We were standing in line for the front desk, and someone came out of the side. She had an iPad in her hand, and she came up to me. I was the next person, and she goes, oh, let me check you in. And she starts walking me off to the side, and she goes, great. She swipes me in, and then she goes, okay, you're checked in, and walks me to the hotel. And while she's doing that, she says, why are you in Houston? How often are you being here? Do you come on the weekends? And I'm like, oh. And I can tell that she is like updating some information in the PMS, only because, I'm like attuned to it. I'm a hotelier by nature, so I'm kind of going, oh, why is she asking me this? But clearly what she was doing is using this personable time to capture more information about me and help me get to the elevated time. So I really appreciated that she was escorting me in there, and she had a chance to, of course, grab that information. These are really critical things that we have to think about for the future of how we're greeting our guests. And when you start talking about mobile, it's really how do we meet the guest where they want to be. People are using their phones for so many things nowadays, and they love notifications about things that are happening. They want these mobile interactions with them. There's some great texting services that can also work along the side, that can send somebody like a little text before they arrive, or say, hey, you're almost here, or while they're in the hotel, you can use something that says, hey, did you know, we're doing a happy hour in the bar. All these little things are pieces that are going to bring a little more revenue and a little bit higher touch point with your guests. So I would definitely make sure you think about this and how your technology stack is. I know mobile is still not pervasive through the independent hotels. It is really moving a lot quicker through Europe than it is probably in North America, but it's something that all of us should be aware of because it helps generate revenue while increasing that personalization with folks.
And now I'd like to transition over to Nicole to discuss the right way to use price points to get full and stay full.
All right. Well, I know our titles here is if you have to lower rates. I know, unfortunately, in the off season, that's generally going to be the case. We're not going to be able to get the rates that we can command when it's compressed. One thing I really want to highlight, because I see this happen quite often in quite a few hotels, is that you need to make sure that you have loaded out your actual competitive sell rate for whatever date range you're loading out into the future. Sometimes hotels will tend to just have kind of a default, $149, $199, et cetera, kind of rate that they load out, and then they adjust as they get closer. But you want to make sure that you have fully priced out to your actual expectations and your comps for any date range that you have rates loaded, so that your shoulder seasons are priced correctly right from the get-go. And it doesn't even matter if your comp set has not done this and you are selling much lower than they are. You want to make sure that you have what you know to be your actual reasonable and competitive rates loaded out. So a couple of things to keep in mind when we are adjusting these rates down, when we are doing more promotions, is that you want to typically make sure and create some sort of sense of urgency with your offer and make it seem like a temporary markdown when you do have those sales going on. So people do feel compelled to book, compelled to act, and also don't create an expectation that they will find this all the time. So whether that's with some sort of flash sale messaging or an advanced purchase rate, you definitely want to fence that offer so that the guest doesn't feel like it will always be available to them. And then also utilize some more restrictive, either length of stay or advanced purchase, kind of non-refundable policies when you do offer deep discounts, so you're not just completely destroying your sell rate. You do want to make sure that when you offer steep discounts, which is very effective, it's absolutely something that should be in your tool belt, but you probably want those to be non-refundable or for a very long length of stay. All right, next slide. All right, move along. I have a couple more tips about pricing. And these are a few concepts that are very interesting and have been very well researched. So the first one is anchoring. People tend to perceive a price to be lower when it's priced next to something higher. I think we're all familiar with that from a retail perspective when you're shopping for goods. So whether that's using flash-through pricing, again, much like the OTAs do, and they have extensive research behind everything they do from a marketing perspective. So that is a very effective way to create a sense of value for your guests, is utilizing straight-through pricing so it looks on sale, or whether it's from your room type positioning, you just utilizing an anchor price so that sale price or that lower shoulder price looks very attractive. You can also use what we call decoy pricing, which kind of goes along with anchoring, where you create a sense of comparison in the guest's mind to get them to buy what you're wanting them to buy. So our example right here is if your standard room is $100 and a presidential suite costs $200, and you're really wanting to push your junior suite or your presidential suite, you can price that suite that you're wanting people to upgrade to. My apologies, I misspoke. In this case, the presidential suite, only price it a little bit higher than that next level down, so people kind of subconsciously think, you know what, I can go to the presidential suite for $10, $20 more. I'm just going to do that because that's a really great value. So that can be a really easy and effective thing to play around with in the off season, which is your room type differentials. They should be different than they are when you're in compressed periods, and you can utilize the reduction of those price point differentials to try and drive bookings into some of your higher rooms and keep your ADR up. That's a great way to avoid losing too much rate in the shoulder, is to reduce your differentials. And even though your actual ADR for those higher room types may be lower than they are at other times of the year, you're still getting that overall rate for the hotel because people are booking up. And then lastly, I think everybody's relatively familiar with this concept, but it is very established that people are very tied to price points that end in 9. So whether you're always pricing that way or you utilize that for sale pricing, just keep in mind that people are psychologically very tied to that number ending in 9 for your price point, and that will boost your production versus rates that end in a different number.
And with that, I'd like to thank our presenters for their insightful analysis. I would also like to open the floor to questions. Remember, you can ask questions in the control panel in the questions tab. We do have one initial question. This comes from Lena. She asks, what is F&B? What is a PMS? And this is directed to Ryan.
Yeah, so F&B, your food and beverage operations in the hotel, everything from your lounge to your breakfast bar or whatever else you have. And of course, those are the outlets that you have to make a little more money. I'm not including, if you give away free breakfast. PMS standing for Property Management System. And this is, of course, how you're checking in people and checking out and all the data that's housed with all of your guest data.
Excellent. We have another question from Eleonora. Eleonora just likes our speech. She thank you guys for your great presentation. Well, thank you, Eleonora, for attending. We do have another question, and this is actually directed towards Nicole. How often should I be doing audits of my PMS and CRS systems to make sure that everything is aligned right so I can pull the right guest data?
That is a very good question. That is critical. I honestly would suggest, if you have the bandwidth on your team, to be doing that once per quarter, but definitely at least twice a year. You need to be going through both systems, make sure that all of your rate codes are current, that they are in use, that you're sunsetting any rate codes that you're not using anymore, that they're mapped correctly. Make sure that you're not getting any unknown reservations coming down or anything syncing up to your CRS that will throw off your reporting, right? Because it's not going to be on the correct rate code, and that's very important when you're trying to segment your guests and target your marketing. Let's see what other content. And then you also want to have probably your sales team, but someone on the team doing quarterly audits of company profiles, company information, your guest profile information in the PMS, if not in the CRM, if you're utilizing one of those as well. But at least once a quarter, you need to be going through, making sure you're getting rid of old data, condensing any duplicates, anything like that, and making sure that you have clean profiles for your companies and your guests, because without that, it's going to be very difficult for you to really effectively do the personalized marketing that we're suggesting.
Excellent. We do have another question. This is from John. John asks, given that OTAs are making it harder to obtain guest information as a small independent hotel, what is the best way to garner this information from guests as often they don't want to provide it at check-in or check-out? Great question.
Yeah, so I'll field that question. The old OTA, do they own the guest or does the hotel own the guest? I think that's, been the age-old battle. And if you ask anybody from Expedia, they'll say that they own the guest. And you ask anybody at the hotel that's actually housing the person, they'll say the guest is ours. Sometimes one of the things that you have to do is think of clever ways to do that. And at the most basic end of this is, how can you get at least an email? And that's the most basic thing. So just asking your front desk or requiring that to come in is at the most basic. Now, through pieces of technology, you can also grab guest information as they're coming through the check-in process. So for example, on our self-service stations in some of our hotels, they'll actually have the ability to scan an ID that then populates all the address information for the guest and puts it right into the PMS, which is brilliant because then you have all of this information. If they're checking in using their mobile phone, one of the things they're going to have to do is make sure all their information is there. So if you have it on the website that OTA person can check in, but there's a hotel, I don't remember if it's in Tennessee or if it was another state, but they do the whole little thing about going to there, and then when they go in to go check in, they have to put in their phone number, their email, and the password. So they're thinking of creative ways. How do I capture that? I mean, these are little independent hotels. That one in Tennessee, I think it's a 55-room hotel. I can't remember their name right now, but I love their commercial. They're like, this is how you check in on our website. So this is all start that you can, grab that information. We know that front desk agents aren't good with grabbing everything as it goes. So start with the most basic, make sure that they're getting the email address. If anything, do a contest with the front desk agents, and then start looking at technology solutions. This information can be super valuable to you no matter what size hotel you are.
Right.
Oh,
right. And I'd
Nicole,
actually like to jump in on that.
Sure.
If I could. Sure. To your point about incentivizing the front desk, that is always so important, whether it's with some sort of competition or however operationally your hotel chooses to address that. But also, if you're talking about guests that are very reluctant to give up their email, incentivize the guest. If you want to give them a free drink or if you have a breakfast buffet and there's not a huge hard cost, just ways that you can incentivize the guests, especially the OTA guests, when they're checking in, to give up that email if they don't want to do it for free. Think about what would incentivize you to give your email to the business, and then just kind of look at how you can implement that. And I've seen it be very successful, even where hotels just change how they're presenting some of the procedures to the guests. So they'll just say, what is your email so I can send you your receipt or your folio or something of that nature, and just don't even present it as an option. Just, I need this information to give you something to do with your stay. And it's pretty successful from what I've seen.
Excellent. The next question is from Lenina again. She asks, can you say more about the problem of discounting rooms and how it can cause unintended problems?
Okay, sure. I'll field that one first. One of the big problems with discounting rooms is then creating this value perception to your guests that is the price they should be paying for your room. So if you do want them to return when it's maybe a slightly busier season, it can be more difficult to get them to pay $50 or $100 more, whereas if previously they were paying that same rate but getting something free, it's a much different kind of perception on the guest part that I'm paying the same and just not getting something for free versus I'm paying a lot more this time. So that's kind of one of the issues you can run into with extreme discounting, where it can be more beneficial to look at doing value adds and additional value to the guest without discounting as much.
Nicole, Patrice has a question that is also about discounting. What is your opinion about flash sales such as Groupon, Secret Escapes, with a 50% generalized discount?
A 55-0 generalized discount?
No, a 50% general discount.
Right, a 50% discount is very difficult. And the problem with a lot of those things, too, is I'm assuming that's just your top-line discount, and then you still pay margin on top. I think those are very difficult to implement without a length of stay requirement, depending upon your hotel's typical rate. So some markets can support that and still, come out ahead from a profit and loss standpoint. They do need to be very, very targeted, though, in either a very short booking window or just for very select dates where you really kind of need to fill and are going to struggle to, do so otherwise, whether you have two big groups and just kind of a hole in the middle where that's really your only option because you don't have stay through, or if you're looking to build a base further out and it's only going to be available and it's non-refundable and people can book for 3 days. those are kind of the two best times to utilize those. But the one thing I would emphasize, if it's not fenced, which even now often Groupon is not anymore, it'll show up on Meta, is that I would always try to run the same thing on your own site while that's available on some other channel.
Excellent. The next question is from Aaron Woods. This looks like it would be directed towards Ryan. Aaron asks, for mobile messaging targeting revenues for early, late check-ins and checkouts, which partners do you suggest for this?
Yeah, so there's a number of us that do some of these things out there. We have a native application that goes in the PMS, and then we've rolled out our mobile solutions to other groups. There's another group called Ariane that specializes in the kind of kiosk and mobile space. And then there's also a handful of others like Keeper, Intelity. They can all do these mobile apps. It depends on what your hotel's appetite is. They all have different price points, and they all do it differently. It really has to be an individual decision by a hotel or group to see what works for you.
The next question is from Hajing. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He asks, how do you find and choose the new potential markets that we are not currently targeting but fit into our property?
Nicole can comment too, but I would say, one of your best resources there are, your local CVB or who you're working more. What are your destination statistics say? Who are your international travelers that are coming in, and when do they travel and how do they travel? So your CVB usually has those type of things. They're a good partner to get that from, because that can help you look at those distribution channels. And I'm sure Nicole has some opinions on this too.
Yeah, that's really important. This is one area where, some of that OTA data does come in handy, and your market manager as well. Obviously, that would just be for that specific site, but they can give you overall traffic, and they are monitoring that kind of stuff very closely, so you can get information from those partners, any wholesale partners you work with. But it's also just kind of staying on top of market trends. And I think we all know that China is growing by leaps and bounds as far as their outbound and international travel. And even something as simple as looking at like their holiday calendar. I'm just doing a little bit of Googling, honestly, a little bit of research for some of these big emerging travel markets, and just seeing what could potentially be a travel period for them, and then looking for the big volume producers or the main OTAs. And again, this is all fairly easily accessible. I'm happy if anybody wants to reach out directly later to discuss it a bit more, but there's every country has kind of their primary OTA that's their big one. So just finding where those produce, and then exploring how you can actually get connected. Most of them are probably already listing your hotel, but they're stealing that inventory. I shouldn't say stealing. They're getting that inventory, whether it's the Expedia affiliate network or from Agoda or from a wholesaler. It's not coming from you, and you don't control it. So just finding those big OTAs in the other markets and exploring how you can get directly set up with that would be crucial.
Very good. China has a question about economy hotels. Do you have any suggestions for economy hotels in low seasons? We already include value items like breakfast, and our higher end competitors have the ability to give deeper discounts and then add on all of these extras. Like you said, we don't want to discount so much that we hurt our reputation. Anyone want to take that on?
I'm Nicole, once again, you can comment. My thought is you play to your strengths. Who are, this goes back to your data. Who are your people that are staying with you? Do you have families? Do you have independent people? Is it young people? Is it older people? And emphasizing, once again, the value that you're bringing to them. I saw a really good example of what an economy hotel was doing down in Florida. One of the things that they would offer is people that came and stayed in a vacation kind of in their off season, they would get credit towards a one-night stay for a 4-night stay or more during peak season. So what a good way to sit there and say, hey, come stay with me now, but then you can work it towards, because like they must have known that I had stayed there before and I got this offer. And I was like, oh, well, we were thinking about going there. Maybe what I'll do is I could bank this money because, if I can use it in high season, this would give me something to do. I really like that idea. Nicole, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great idea at playing off your return guests, but part of it is also going to be exploring, and I'm not sure what you do from a marketing standpoint currently, but this will really come into play with your social media, with exploring potentially there's some marketing companies that offer stuff at no upfront cost that basically do display ads for you. Some can do social, but really kind of focusing on some of your general content out there as well, and what you're doing from a marketing perspective to get the top of the funnel. Because I understand, especially as an independent, it can be really difficult. So you unfortunately do, especially in the shoulder, you're going to have to explore some of those other channels, and potentially actually look at investing a little bit more from a marketing standpoint to feed that top of the funnel, because you only have so many returning guests and only so much demand. So, whether you're choosing to do that from your own marketing or exploring different OTA partnerships, the shoulder season is when you're really going to have to play around with that and kind of look at your overall revenue versus potentially focusing too much on the margin you're having to pay at that point, because just kind of look at that more as a cost of customer acquisition to get some of those guests in, and then focus on providing that experience and getting their contact information to turn them into repeat guests. So kind of leveraging some of the flexibility you have on OTA channels that brands don't, and using that to bring in hopefully some new guests that you can then convert to repeat guests.
Excellent. So Lenina has another question. Do you have any advice on breaking into the corporate meeting industry when you are a small resort property 2 hours from the closest metro area? Ryan?
Yeah, what a loaded and great question. I pondered this myself when I was a director of sales and marketing, and I had a hotel that actually was outside really the corporate metro area. And there's a lot of different things that you can do. I mean, part of it is thinking about who do you have access to and why would they come to you. Some of the most meaningful things that you can do are board retreats, and certainly those are going to be kind of a great target for you. So having some type of a messaging that goes out to those board retreats, why would they come to you? It doesn't always have to be a discounted price. It just has to be a great value in what you hold in it. And for a board retreat, if you're not a large property and you are further away, that is a brilliant solution to get people that have to sit there and talk to each other. So that's a good one. Certainly there's other ideas, and I'm sure, Nicole, you may have one or two.
Yeah, that's actually a great suggestion. And one of the first things that I would always go to is focusing on a bit more of kind of the experiential side of corporate business, whether it's a retreat or perhaps kind of awards or ceremony type things that groups and businesses in the city might hold, and kind of focusing on local stuff. So maybe not people that may not like fly in and then travel out to your hotel, but really focusing on businesses that are there in that city and what you could host off-site for them to draw them out there. And again, whether that's an evening reception, maybe if you're a bit more of a resort area, or work with them as far as incentives as they provide to their salespeople and to their staff, and utilizing any outlets that you have that way.
Yeah, I would definitely say, part of what we should do is look through your data and understand who is currently staying there. There could be people there for social occasions that could definitely turn into corporate business. So kind of looking at some of the data that's in your PMS and using that in a way to create those targeted offers, or just to create a reach out to those folks and start promoting some of the things that would be great about why they would bring a meeting out there, why they would want to have an event with you, and what's in it for them.
So we are rounding out our 5-minute mark. We have 2 final questions, and so I figure we will answer those and then close the floor. If you do have additional questions, you can always email us at info@stayintouch.com. We'll be happy to answer them. The first question is from another Justin in the audience. Justin asks, in OTA-dominated markets, what are the possibilities for launching closed deals? Are they, or do they usually work out?
Nicole? And I apologize. I may have to clarify on that a bit. By closed deals, if we're referring to ones that you're offering direct to your own guests, do they often work out, closed deals? So they are a little more tricky. Yeah.
So
one thing I would suggest is that you can, if you're keeping it closed, you still now have so much space to play on social media, right? And I'm sure eventually all the OTAs are going to figure out how to get into that space as well. But you can do so much with targeted advertising, whether it's on Instagram or Facebook. And these aren't even current guests, but you can really target these offers. They're not going to run afoul of parity issues, and they'll be direct. So that's a really kind of easy and interesting space to explore. For your promos, because I've had a lot of properties run into this recently as well with a reduced contact list because of GDPR, to where they're really kind of extending into experimenting on social channels even more, and it can be relatively low cost. You can test the waters with a few $100s and see how that goes, but that's a really great space to play with some closed direct promotions without kind of edging into parity issues.
Great. I hope that answers Justin's question. The final question is once again from Hejing, and they ask, how do you deal with the problem that wholesalers are selling offline fit rate online, FIT rates, lower than the BAR rate, especially in low season, which can undercut our control in online distributions?
That, I will take that one, actually. That is the $1 million question. I wish I had a perfect response to that. Unfortunately, a lot of the times you're going to have to make a test booking, see who that actually comes through to your property, and you're going to have to take it to your wholesale partner and kind of explore solutions for that in your partnership with them. I do have clients that have had to get to the point where they've had to, terminate relationships with wholesalers, but that is really at this point, unfortunately, is the only way to address it. Because with metasearch, it just, as long as those fourth party, I call them sites, can get their spots on metasearch, the only way we can do it is kind of a whack-a-mole approach and figuring out who is reselling it and taking it to them and trying to kind of leverage a relationship and make them stop.
Like to conclude the presentation, I want to thank our panel members once again for their insightful analysis. This webinar was brought to you by SHR and Stay in Touch. SHR, or Scepter Hospitality Resources, is a leading provider of advanced tools and services that help hotels execute their best distribution strategy while delighting guests and optimizing profitability. Stay in Touch is a software-as-a-service mobile hotel property management system company dedicated to creating a new way to hotel. Stay in Touch is focused on developing solutions that help hotels raise service levels, drive revenues, reduce costs, and ultimately captivate their guests. With that, I'd like to conclude our presentation. Thank you very much for attending. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to email us at info@stayintouch.com. The webinar recording and presentation will be available to all attendees and non-attendees within 24 hours. Thanks again and good afternoon.
So for that one question,